all eyes are on the U.S. Supreme Court as it hears oral arguments on a state law banning most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy in a case that could impact abortion rights nationwide and around the globe. The controversial debate is coming to a crescendo, with both sides adamantly fighting for their position: pro-life, that believes life begins at conception, versus the pro-choice stance that women have the sole right to choose what to do with their own bodies. Hello, I'm Dimyake Mwakaliele, and this is Our Voices. On today's program, we will look at reproductive rights in regard to abortion and how the possibility of overturning laws in Texas, Mississippi, or ultimately Roe versus Wade decision in the United States may have influenced African countries in their legal approach to the practice in light of the change to the U.S. gag rule. Later in the program, we'll get a perspective of both sides of the debate and share the emotional stigma that a woman may endure who chooses to get an abortion. On a programming note, today's program may not be appropriate for younger viewers, and VOA does not support one view over another. Some women's rights activists in Kenya welcomed U.S. President Joe Biden's order revoking the ban blocking U.S. funding to women's health organizations that provide abortion or abortion-related services. Critics say the so-called gag rule left women uninformed about safe options to end a pregnancy. Mohammed Yusuf reports from Nairobi.
Najma Wangoi lost her sister in 2018 after she bought medicine from a drugstore to induce an abortion. Wangoi says her sister didn't know there was a better way to undergo an abortion.
Alikosa kujua, manake zile dawa alinunua 3,500.
She didn't know because she bought those medicines for 3,500 shillings. If she knew there was a place to do a safe abortion, she would still be alive. She should have explained her situation to the hospital, and she would have been treated.
Labda wangempunguzia bei kama ni pesa mingi ifike hiyo 3,500.
Under the global gag rule originally enacted by President Ronald Reagan and reinstituted by President Donald Trump, it became difficult for millions of women to seek abortion services at health centers receiving U.S. funds. The gag rule blocked U.S. government funding for these organizations if they provided abortion services, counseling, or referrals. The rule effectively shut down health clinics as well as community sensitization programs about sexual and reproductive health. Health expert Boniface Uchie says while the ban has now been lifted by President Joe Biden, it will not be enough to undo the effects it had on women's health in Africa.
Lifting it is great, but it's going to take a while for the impact of the global gag rule as instituted by Trump to begin to lift. So it's going to require a lot of funding. It's going to require a lot of programs to undo what has been done over the past 4 years.
Rose Accord is likely to be alive after taking tablets to abort a baby in 2019. After 3 days of pain, the fetus emerged, but the placenta got stuck in her womb, requiring urgent medical attention.
Hata kwa saizi niko na shida kidogo. Tangu nitoe hiyo mimba juu haikutoka vizuri.
I have a health problem now since I did the abortion because it didn't come out well. These days, my menstruation goes for a month, and there's nothing I'm using like family planning. My menstrual period goes on non-stop.
Kama family plan hakuna, inatoka tu mfululizo.
Accord, Wangoi and others hope that with the gag rule lifted, more women can be saved from abortion-related deaths and health crisis. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Nairobi.
Legal or not, women are still in danger of unsafe abortions, including in Kenya, where despite the country's revised laws that allows for termination of pregnancies if the health of the mother and baby are at risk. As Brenda Mulinya reports from Nairobi, unsafe backstreet abortions are claiming lives of many women and girls.
Lillian, not her real name, nearly lost her life 3 years ago trying to terminate a pregnancy she wasn't ready for after the sudden death of her husband. The now 32-year-old says with 4 children and no husband, it was not practical for her to have another baby. With no clear framework and guidelines for accessing this right in place in Kenya, she sought the only other way she could to terminate her pregnancy.
My friend first told me to consume some very bitter local leaves that would help me get the abortion. That did not work. Another friend then advised me to take a pack of family planning pills mixed with some more bitter herbs. I started bleeding. I was alone in the house with no one to help me.
She was denied post-abortion care in public hospitals and had to rely on a medical health caregiver until she recovered, but at a cost. Lillian represents hundreds of women and girls in Kenya who seek abortion services at great risks to their lives. Victoria Atieno, a reproductive health rights community worker, says cases like Lillian's are many in these informal settlement areas. She says those who procure backroom abortions are often ostracized from the community. For some, the consequences have been fatal.
Stigmatization
is high in these parts of the city, leading to cases of suicide because girls don't want people to talk about them procuring abortions. They feel like they are not free to associate with other girls who are deemed cleaner than them.
A non-governmental organization, Center for Reproductive Health, says the lack of proper government guidelines to actualize freedoms granted in the Kenyan Constitution has led to an increase in cases of unsafe abortions and the resultant deaths and lifelong injuries for girls and women.
The Constitution outlines emergency, life, health, and, if allowed by any other law. The unfortunate situation in this country is that despite the constitutional protection, what we have seen historically, including post the passing of this constitution, many women and girls who ordinarily qualify to access abortion within the protection of the law, opting to go to quacks.
The Kenyan government remains tight-lipped on the place of the constitutionally mandated safe abortions under limited circumstances. A high court in 2019 asks the Ministry of Health to operationalize the standards and guidelines that would enable those seeking these services access to the same in public institutions. Eseli Simiyu, a doctor and a member of the Kenyan Parliament, says the silence from the Ministry of Health is not the solution to stopping the backdoor abortions that continue to account for 17% of all maternal deaths in the country. He says the authorities must act now by making sure the law is clear.
Define health, because if you define health as mental well-being, not just the absence of disease, but mental well-being, then the health is threatened if somebody is carrying an unwanted pregnancy.
Abortion in Kenya remains illegal unless the life of the mother is in danger, with highly punitive measures if one is caught procuring or administering it. The MP wants the government to legalize it.
I think we must face it and find a way. And to me, the only way I can see it is legalize it and control it by well-trained personnel in properly registered and well-equipped centers. That is the only solution.
While the situation remains as it is, women like Vivian continue to rescue girls and women on the brink of life-changing injuries and even death from unsafe abortions in Kenya. Brenda Mulinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
It's time for a short break, but first, do you believe the U.S. gag rule may have influenced some African governments to legalize abortion? Tell us on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is at VOA, Our Voices. We are also on WhatsApp. Our number is on your screen. When we come back, we'll examine the trend of legalizing abortion on the continent. Stay with us.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science and technology. City, rural, educated, or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. In 2003, the African Union adopted the Maputo Protocol, a women's rights charter which states in Article 14 that abortion must be legal to save a woman's life and preserve her physical or mental health, and in cases of rape, incest, and grave fetal anomaly. Yet, according to Guttmacher Institute, since then, only 7 countries have reformed their laws to meet these minimum criteria. They are Cape Verde, South Africa, Tunisia, Mozambique, Sao Tome and Principe, and Angola. And in one case, exceed, saying in total, 21 out of the 48 on the continent expanded the grounds on which abortion is legal between 2000 and 2019. Now, add Benin, which in October adopted a new law legalizing abortion in most cases. A conservative country, Parliament passed the law to prevent a wave of clandestine abortions that have resulted in deaths. Kwam Joel Honoré has this report from Cotonou.
5 years ago, Francine became pregnant. A student at the time, she was afraid to tell her parents. She asked VOA not to use her real name and protect her identity.
Là, j'ai constaté que c'est une grossesse.
I couldn't tell my parents because I was still in college, and if they learned of my pregnancy, I was going to stop going to school.
She ended up getting a clandestine abortion, but the procedure went badly and she had to be hospitalized.
Quand on est arrivé ici, on nous a mis dans une...
When we got here, we were taken to the consultation room. I lay down on a table, and when I took off the filling I was wearing, things were coming out of me. They told me it was my intestines.
Ils ont dit que c'est mes intestins.
There has been an increase of clandestine abortions this year as sexual assault have risen, says the head gynecologist of Aplahwe City Hospital.
J'ai eu à gérer 3 cas.
I had to manage 3 cases of clandestine abortions. There is one who died, and there are 2 teenagers, 17 and 18 years old, who are alive, but they no longer have their uteruses.
According to Benin's Ministry of Social Affairs, 200 women die each year as a result of complication. This led the government to introduce a law in October authorizing abortion to stop such death.
Avec le constat qui a été fait,
we really had to react. We have hundreds of women who died in deplorable conditions because they wanted to try to abort under non-secure conditions.
But Benin's clergy and traditional leaders opposed the law as an attack on life.
La vie de l'homme est quelque chose d'important.
The life of a human being is something important and must be considered. The problem is to know in what conditions the woman got pregnant.
But those who have had complications from clandestine abortions says there should be no debate about saving the life of women.
When we get pregnant and don't want to keep it, we have to be helped. Pregnancy prevents us from going to school.
Benin's government is preparing to launch a public awareness campaign in schools and throughout the country about merit of the abortion law. Kwam Joel Honoré for VOA News, Cotonou, Benin.
In Malawi, unless a woman's life is at risk, abortion is still illegal, despite efforts to overturn the ban in June. And an estimated 140,000 women per year are having unsafe terminations that leave 12,000 women dead and countless others permanently scarred. Efforts to liberalize current abortion laws to prevent deaths are facing resistance from conservative groups. Lamek Masina reports from Blantyre.
After getting pregnant at age 17, Melita, not her real name, saw abortion as her only option to stay in school. But Malawi's 160-year-old abortion law only allows termination to save the life of a mother. So Melita went to a witch doctor.
A few hours after taking the concoction of herbs, I started bleeding heavily. The pain I felt around my cervix was unbearable, and I started crying while rolling on the floor.
Though she can no longer have children, Melita was lucky.
Because I've been hearing stories of women dying from backstreet abortions. So after experiencing persistent abdominal pain and bleeding, I was very scared that I would also die.
Research by the US-based Guttmacher Institute and the Malawi College of Medicine shows 140,000 Malawian women have an unsafe abortion each year that leave 12,000 of them dead. Countless survivors like Melita are permanently scarred. Campaigners have since 2015 been pushing a bill on expanding legal abortions to cases of rape, incest, fetal deformity, and threats to health.
There are additional 3 grounds that are there. When enacted, the new law will allow women who face physical and mental dangers to their lives to access abortion.
But protests in 2016 from conservative and religious groups who call any abortion murder delayed debate on the bill.
God blesses you in your womb. And the Bible also tells us in Jeremiah chapter 20 that thank God that the womb of my mother was not my grave. If somebody dies before they are born, it is like the womb was their grave.
Malawi's lawmakers are expected to finally debate the bill before the current parliamentary session end on March 26. Lamek Masina for VOA News, Blantyre.
It's time for another break. When we return, we'll hear from 2 women on the opposite side of the debate over reproductive rights and abortion. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. Pro-life and pro-choice advocates are polar opposites in the abortion debate, and we spoke with 2 women to understand more about their positions. We begin with Anne Kioko, Africa Campaigns Director for Citizen Go, a global community of millions of active citizens who work together and campaign to defend and promote life, family, and liberty. Kioko says abortion is the murder of an innocent child and should not be allowed under any circumstances. She says more resources should be put toward education and prevention.
Like you rightfully said, abortion is illegal in Kenya according to the Constitution of Kenya of 2010, Article 26, which clearly says that life begins at conception. Actually, this is the best constitution that Kenya ever had. And Kenyans are pro-life. Basically, Kenyans are pro-life. According to the Ipsos survey of 2014, 85% of Kenyans support life from conception to natural death, and they consider abortion as murder. And but there's a lot of pressure going on. Recently, last year, we have been fighting a bill that has been in the Senate, planted by, or sponsored rather by Honorable Susan Kehika, is a senator for Nakuru, and this bill was outrightly an abortion bill. It was trying to push for abortion. But when the Kenyans were engaged, when the Kenyans were involved in this bill, they rejected it and it was withdrawn.
Now, some argue that by making abortion illegal or not allowing it publicly or legally, it only drives a lot of women to the back door, the back streets, where they are ultimately going to have abortions, but it's very dangerous in that they'll eventually die from that procedure.
Personally, I don't think there's any safe abortion. Abortion performed in a clinic in America where there's the best services, and an abortion committed in Kibera, in one of the slums in Kenya, is still murder. It stops a heartbeat, it kills a person that has a future, and it stops a person's human life. What we should be talking about, Ndimiake, is how should we avoid pregnancies that we consider unwanted. It is not about how we should legalize killing of preborn and very innocent babies.
Can you elaborate on the preventive measures, and how does Citizen Go try to really increase a woman's access to reproductive health?
The best we can do is to push for better healthcare. There's a lot of money that is coming right now, especially because you have seen that a lot of changes, especially in the US leadership. A lot of money has been given to come down to legalize abortion in Africa. My encouragement would be this money should be used to go open a hospital, a proper hospital, level 5 hospital in Kibera, in Mazare, in the village that I come from that doesn't even have roads. And in these villages, if we have proper healthcare, proper equipment, then we wouldn't be talking about women are dying because of lack of proper healthcare. Just let us put the money where it should be rightful, not use the money diverting it into the abortion industry instead of pushing the right thing.
There are a lot of women also within the African continent that are pushing for access to abortion if they want it. And then you're seeing that there's a lot of change happening along that front. Benin recently just legalized abortion, and that trend is likely to increase. So how do you see, what's the middle ground?
It's very unfortunate to lose Benin, but Africa as a continent, out of all those countries, because there are over 50 countries in Africa, if you go to these African countries, go to the village, Uganda, I was there the other day, go to Malawi, go to Namibia, just go to the villages, talk to a woman, and they'll tell you what they want is not abortion. What they want is not killing of their babies. Actually, most of the African countries, most of the African women, they consider babies are a blessing. Most of them are blessing. And that's why even when somebody gives a birth, there's a party, there's all these celebrations, they go with gifts, they're welcoming a child because it's a blessing. So basically what I can say is that it's all about neocolonialism. We are experiencing a lot of that. And with the current government of the United States, a lot of pressure is coming down here.
I also spoke with Sarah Shaw, head of advocacy at MSI Reproductive Choices, an international NGO that provides contraception and safe abortion services in 37 countries around the world, including in Africa. A strong advocate of a woman's right to choose, Shaw argues that women must be given the right to choose and that banning abortion only puts more women at risk as they seek underground abortions.
In the countries where my organisation we work in 37 countries, mainly in Africa, and the majority of the countries in which we work, abortion is legally restricted and socially restricted as well. You know, and this means that women they're not able to access the information they need or the services they need. They're exposed to a lot of misinformation from social media. They receive a lot of opposition and resistance and stigma from religious and community leaders. Gender inequality is a huge challenge. And the state is there to protect our human rights and ensure that everybody can live equally and fairly and free from discrimination. You know, that we have the right to life, the right to freedom, the right to health, the freedom of decision making. This is not a decision that women take lightly. You know, it's a very difficult decision for women to make, but they have to be given the means to make that decision.
There have been a lot of movements trying to increase access to abortion for women, and a lot of push all around the world. What comes to mind is even in Argentina, and of course, as you also just mentioned, several African countries. And it seems as though there's been a lot of resistance to this. Of course, there's also those who are pro-life, who say that at any stage, ending the life of a fetus is murder. How do you, as your organization, counter that argument?
For my organization, we respect people's right to choose what they believe in. And if you don't agree with abortion and, you know, you decide that, well, you know, if I find myself with an unintended pregnancy, I could never go through with an abortion, that's fine. We absolutely support your right to make that decision. But conversely, we also support a woman who may decide to end the unintended pregnancy, we support her right to make that decision as well. And it's really all about choice. My organisation supports choice. And regardless of where you stand on the abortion issue, and regardless of where you are as an individual at that point in your life, we support your right to make a choice and to act on that choice, and to act on that choice safely.
Would you say the number of abortions, especially as they become legal and especially as this debate is ongoing, are they on the increase? Is it on the decrease? And really, what are the alternatives to that, to abortion?
Yeah. I mean, so in Africa, the rate of abortions has it's roughly stayed the same since the 1990s. It's not going up and it's not going down. But it is what we do know is that around 45% of all abortions in the world are unsafe. And most of these abortions are in low-income countries. The proportion of unintended pregnancies that are ending in abortion has increased by 14% over the last 30 years. And in countries where abortion is less legally restricted, the abortion rates actually go down. Because, if you have access to abortion services, it means that sexual and reproductive health is less stigmatized, it's probably less restricted, you'll have more access to sexuality education. When you're an adolescent, you've probably got more access to family planning services. And all of these things enable women and give women the tools they need to make informed choices about their bodies. And ultimately we will see abortions going down.
Many would describe a lot of the resistance due to culture, to tradition, to conservatism, or just naturally a conservative society. What's your experience in terms of that?
We don't want to see women dying of preventable causes. We don't want to see our children being orphaned by these preventable causes. By just helping people learn and educate them is a really good way of breaking down those barriers. And we've now got some really strong supporters from from different religious communities and traditional leaders.
And that is our show for this week. To catch up on the latest episodes of Our Voices, visit the VOA website at voanews.com or YouTube. Thank you to my Our Voices colleagues, and on behalf of everyone at the Voice of America, I'm Dimyake Mwakalielye. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe.